everyone working toward dignity, independence, and civil rights for Vermonters with disabilities. Like Alaina said, my name is Tyler, and I'm a member of the Youth Transition Team here at VCIL. My experience with disability began when I was 2, and I was diagnosed with a mild case of cerebral palsy that affects the fine motor skills on my right side. I also live in central Vermont with my 5 dogs and have been working at VCIL since 2014.
And I too am a person with a disability. My experience began when I was 5. I had a seizure disorder that resulted in the need to remove half of my brain. So I have kind of a limp, and I can't use my right arm very well, or my left arm. Today we want to talk about communication, what it is, and how it affects gaining and maintaining employment. If you have any questions, do feel free to ask at any time. Let's start with the definition of communication. Communication is the transferring of thoughts, information, emotion, and ideas through gesture, voice, symbols, signs, and expressions from one person to another. In other words, communication is about sharing what you think with other people, and it takes many forms.
It seems like getting our ideas across should be easy, but in fact there are many barriers people experience in communicating, and some have to do with the nature of our disabilities. For example, if someone has a hard time reading or writing because of their disability, they will find it difficult to understand written communication. And some disabilities make it hard to understand nonverbal communication like facial expressions. I know in my own experience, nonverbal communication of a handshake has been hard for me. Have you ever heard people talk about the importance of a firm handshake when you go into an interview? They say the firmness of one's handshake says a lot about their confidence, but because of my cerebral palsy, it affects my right side. So I always want to shake hands with my left, but most people shake hands with their right, and I'm weaker on my right side. So when people shake that hand, they are receiving a message that I am not confident because my handshake is weak.
And I know in my experience, one of my hidden disabilities is that I don't have peripheral vision in my left eye because of my surgery. So sometimes people will see me on the street, and maybe it's someone I just met, and they'll wave, but then I don't see them, so I don't react, and then instead of interpreting me as a friendly person, that means they're interpreting me as being kind of ignoring them and smug, which is really not what I'm trying to do, and not good for networking or meeting people, especially in the business world. So communication is not only about the messages that we send, but it's also about tone. So tone is what emotion we are trying to portray, but within the words that we're using. So today we're going to talk about 3 different types of communication, and all take different tones. So those different types are passive, aggressive, and assertive communication.
So let's start with passive communication. The behaviors of passive communication portray indifference, that you don't care either way, even if you do care. For example, if you really want to be a school teacher, but you don't say that, and you end up working at a candy store because your parents or maybe somebody else wants you to get a job, doesn't really care what job, you're acting in a passive manner, which means other people are allowed to make choices about the direction of your life, and it gives them control of your life instead of you. So on this screen are some things a person may say if they are being passive. They may say, whatever you think, I guess that would be okay, or I don't know. A person that is being passive will oftentimes not make eye contact, have shrugged shoulders, they may not seem energetic or confident, and they may look at the floor. If a person acts passively, other people will decide for them, and their opinion won't be considered. And sometimes this makes a person feel angry or resentful because they didn't get what they wanted or their needs weren't being met.
So while being passive is about not speaking up for yourself, the opposite is being aggressive. Aggressive behavior is about getting what you want regardless of the needs of others. So that means attacking, threatening, being disruptive, or defensive. So if someone is acting aggressively, they might say things like, "You heard what I said," or maybe, "It's my way or the highway," or "Don't be stupid." Acting aggressively means that a person is putting blame on people instead of the situation. They use you statements such as, "You don't do it right." And I know in my experience as a person with a disability, there are times when my parents might be really quick to help me do something, and really anybody. It happens, with coworkers or anyone that I'm with. So whether I ask for help or not, they want to help me, and these are times when I get really frustrated and I might act aggressively, or I have in the past by snapping at them. So that might be an experience that maybe other people have had, but
And then for me, in my experience, I feel like I end up getting aggressive when I feel like I'm not heard, or I feel like I didn't have any choice in the matter. My parents, my mom, when I was young, would do a lot of things for me because I think she felt bad that I had a disability and really wanted to help make my life easier. So she would do things like cut my meat or tie my shoes or clean my room or do my laundry. And those are all really great things to do, but unfortunately when I grew up and I went out into the real world, I didn't have all those life experience skills, and I had to end up learning them. And so now, like when I go out to eat with my boyfriend, it's nice because he acknowledges the fact that I can cut my own meat, but maybe I'll have a hard time, and he'll ask, "Hey, do you need some help with that?" And if I do, I can say yes, but at least I'm given a choice. And so it's also nice to remember, like Alaina said, that when, whether it be your coworker or your friends or family members or relatives, that when they're doing things for you and maybe they don't ask you, that they're coming from a good place with good intentions. So something to keep in mind.
So what are the results of aggressive behavior? Aggressive behavior leads to offending others, and it also only offers a temporary satisfaction. So we might get what we want kind of in the immediate, but in the long term, because it damaged our relationships or offended other people, and it makes other people want to avoid us and can be harmful.
So in the workplace, people with disabilities might have trouble doing a task that is part of their job requirements and could lead to frustration over time. This is not when you would want to talk to your boss about a reason. This is when you would want to talk to your boss about a reasonable accommodation request that would help you achieve the task. A reasonable accommodation is an assistance or change to the workplace that enables an employee to do their job even though they might have a disability. An example of a reasonable accommodation might be having speech software or an office with a door if someone has ADHD and gets distracted easily. Asking for an accommodation might be frustrating for a person with a disability because you might feel like you aren't able to do your job as well as other people, but it's easier to ask for an accommodation rather than to lash out or act aggressively towards your coworkers, which would not be effective and may lead to negative consequences down the road. A reasonable accommodation will help you maintain employment down the road and will help to fulfill all your job requirements. So being passive and aggressive are extremes. They're both ends of the spectrum. The happy medium between the two extremes is assertive communication. This is what we are striving for, and it means standing up for personal rights, expressing thoughts and feelings and beliefs that are direct, honest, in an appropriate way, and that also respects the rights of other people. For example, being passive, everyone else gets what they want, but not you. Being aggressive means that you get what you want, but others do not. And being assertive means that all viewpoints are considered and heard.
So when someone is being assertive, they might say things like, I would like to tell you what jobs I'm interested in. They might say something like, I think that would be great. Let's sit down and make a list. Or, I feel dismissed when you do not listen to me. Being assertive is about using I statements. So if you're, so it's the opposite of you statements. It's about not blaming the person, but looking at the situation as a whole.
Some examples of assertive behavior are focusing on the problem, not the person, creating good working relationships, anger is dealt with appropriately, and your feelings are expressed. Some examples of assertive body language is making eye contact, being an open listener, and having relaxed shoulders.
So some results of assertive behavior are that you will gain respect, problems have a good chance of being resolved, and you will feel good about yourself. And so people will not react defensively. They might react defensively towards you, but you may not get what you want, but you're able to reach an understanding with others more easily. So being assertive is helpful in the work environment where there are lots of personalities kind of commingling and are working on a team. Communicating effectively with everyone is critical when working on a team, so being assertive is the most effective way to do that.
So here are some tips for being assertive. The first one is don't say sorry when it's not necessary. This implies you are accepting blame even if something is not your fault. Number 2, don't take a negative comment personally and let it affect your emotional balance. I know this can be hard, but once you practice it, it gets easier. And also, number 3, think win-win. Look at the higher objective and get yourself and the other person to focus on that. Look at the big picture. And keep asking questions to understand the other person's point of view and don't assume that you know what the other person's motives are. This will help de-escalate any aggressive communication and keep things open.
So there might be times when maybe you've practiced being assertive and you are working with someone who is maybe being aggressive. So this is a time when it might be best to tell the person, you really want to talk to them about the matter that's at hand, but you would like to put the conversation on hold for a while and then talk about it when both parties are more calm and have had ample time to kind of think about what they want to say. So kind of in thinking about passive, aggressive, and assertive communication as a whole, we could maybe take an example like, say, there's a person, we'll call him Jeff, and maybe he wants to be a cook, but his mom or whoever goes out and gets him a bagger job at Shaw's. So maybe that's not what he wants. If he were being passive, he might just go and work as a bagger at Shaw's and end up not on the path that he was hoping to. If he were acting in the same situation but in an aggressive manner, whoever helped him find that job, he might be yelling and saying things like, "You don't know how to find me a job," and kind of blaming the person instead of the situation and using those you statements. But if he were being assertive, he might sit down, calmly and say, "Hey, I appreciate the effort that you took in helping me to find a job. I want to talk about some of the things that I'm interested in doing." So he's being assertive about what his needs are and also considering the needs of other people.
So this next screen are some references that are more in depth on passive, aggressive, and assertive communication. And then there are also some slides or a couple TED Talks that you might be interested in, The Power of Introverts and Embrace the Shake. We found those to be really good TED Talks that we enjoyed. So thank you today for joining us for today's webinar. This webinar will be archived on Vermont Family Network's website, along with many other previously recorded webinars. Be sure to visit VFN's website at www.vermontfamilynetwork.org for a complete list of upcoming webinars, workshops, and support groups. And if you would like to get in touch with us, we are Tyler Sweeten and Alaina Clements from Vermont Center for Independent Living. And again, thank you so much for having us, and have a great day.